Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Leader in You podcast brought to you by EMC Leaders. We're so excited to be here today. My name is Paulina, and I co host this amazing podcast with the wonderful Dr. Lola Gershfeld.
Hi, Paulina, and hi, Susan. It's so nice to be here with you. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our podcast. I'm so excited about today's conversation. I've been looking forward to actually having Susan on our show for some time. We talked, I think, last year, and I feel like she can bring some wisdom and share her experience on how leaders and team can really share maybe the feelings that they experience in terms of dealing with the changes in the economy or the business sector and everything that is happening right now in the world, as well as understanding and maybe feeling a little bit overwhelmed and unsure how to balance business demands and maintaining still good relationships with each other. So, Susan, who is our guest, works right in that intersection. And I'm so happy to have Susan to share her experience and wisdom on how they can maintain that connection, energy, and focus in creating that environment where people feel supported, where people feel still connected and safe with each other, where they can turn to each other and talk about things and really work well together. Mhm.
Yes, we're so excited to welcome Susan as our guest for the podcast today. Welcome, Susan. We're so happy you're here.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here as well. Very excited. Thank you.
Yay. So, if you have not met Susan before, Susan is the CEO of Generon International and the founder of Tailored Wisdom. Did I say that correctly?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, amazing. She's an award-winning coach, a guide, an author, and her work focuses mostly on leadership renewal. Well, this podcast is about leadership, so it fits perfectly what we talk about here. She talks about restoring psychological safety, cultural healing, authentic alignment, and helping leaders lead from the inside. And so we appreciate so much that she has taken her time to come here and join us today for this conversation and also share insight on what her approach is all about. So, welcome, Susan.
Thank you again.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get to it. Dr. Lola, do you want to add anything?
Well, I think that's a great introduction, Susan Taylor. Yeah, and I'm excited to hear also Susan's experience. Welcome,
So,
Susan.
so let's get to it. So, Susan, you talk about leadership renewal rather than leadership development. I actually really love that because, sometimes we think of development as learning or creating something new that we have not yet learned or we don't have a skill in, or maybe we lack. And when I hear at least leadership renewal, it is like you are a leader, you have these qualities, you have these skills. It's really in all of us. But how can we create a renewed leadership experience? And I don't know exactly how that is for you and what it means for you. So why don't you tell us, like, what is the renewal part mean to you? And how do you know when a leader is depleted, versus someone who maybe doesn't have the skills or feels like they're incapable of becoming a leader or thriving in the leadership position? Tell us.
Beautiful. I love this question
Oh, good.
because I think in a similar way, for me, renewal is really about evolution. So how I lead is not the same today as it was 3 years ago, a decade ago. And so what I mean by renewal is creating opportunities where we actually reignite how we lead and how we live through what I call authentic alignment. Authentic alignment. And
Mm,
so, how do I know when I'm out of alignment, or how do I know when things are maybe depleted or that leadership energy needs to be renewed. Oftentimes it's something like this. I get up in the morning, I start my day, and the first three meetings are the first three meetings that I've had for many, many years that used to bring me a lot of excitement, a lot of motivation. And now they don't mean the same to me anymore. They don't hold the same meaning. So to make a long story short, I believe that renewal has a direct link, yes, to authentic alignment. And through that alignment, the meaning that we generate for ourselves and others as leaders.
That's so beautifully said. And actually, while you were sharing like that point to where it's almost like we lose that fire, we lose that drive and the motivation. It's like really understanding deeply what happened to that part that drives us. Actually, one of the things that's really interesting is as this new year came for 2026, I'm very present on social media, and I was noticing a lot of people who were like, it's not like a new you, new year, new you year. Or new me, new you, new year. It's like a new year, but like I'm just still gonna continue to grow and become the person that I have becoming in 2025 and growing from what I'm already doing and working on. So I like what you're explaining in the renewal of the leadership because how you were there, you were excited, you really had a grasp on those meetings and that drive and that moving forward, that motion of moving forward. And then that we lost that on the way, we lost that in some way. And now it's like, how can we find that back and yet be aligned and authentically aligned? And well, I just have one more thing to add to that because I was reading a book and the doctor says, one of the biggest struggles that people have are saying and thinking one thing and then doing something else, right? So that authentic wanting, if we say something, we get that block, which Dr. Lola talks a lot about in her process and using the process to remove those blocks to find that alignment. But we have that misalignment, right? We say one thing, we think another thing, and then we're doing something completely different. And so that authentic alignment reminds me of how important it is to what is actually in our heart and desired in that leadership experience, what blocks us, where Dr. Lola does such a great job in identifying where the cycle comes in and stops us from those actions to actually align with our words and thoughts. What do you think, Dr. Lola?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I like the approach of understanding when there is no alignment, but people have to be aware of that, right, Susan? I mean, you have to really feel like I liked your example. I used to come to these meetings happy and motivated and excited about the topics and to discuss those. And now I don't, right? I don't. I dread the meetings. I just want to end the meetings. I mean, it just brings me back to those board meetings that I used to go to, where we would just have these 8 hour long meetings and we would just be in circles. We would not go forward. We would not grow. And it created this dreadful feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm so exhausted from these meetings. And when are we going to end? So how did you come to that realization that alignment is so important? And how do you actually fix that?
Exactly. Oh my gosh, we could talk for days. There's so much alignment right here. Paulina, you mentioned the word fire,
Mm-hmm.
and that really piqued my interest because for me, when I think of renewal, it's about what it takes to reignite. So I even have a program that's called Reignite Your Spirit because it's the same thing that I hear you talking about. When we renew, we're reigniting, we're not reinventing. Because I think oftentimes when we reinvent ourselves, it's often because of a situation or a projection of someone else or something else that tells me who I should be or tells me what's next for me, when in effect, only I can make that choice. And so you
Mhm.
also mentioned the word heart. I'm going to take it a level deeper. I'm going to say alignment for me is about being in alignment with my soul. And it's
Mhm.
different because the heart, I think, is the emotional feeling piece. The soul, that's the purpose piece. That's like the reason for being piece. And so when I don't feel that meaning, to answer Lola, your question, that's when I can start to sense that everything's looking great on paper. I look successful perhaps from the outside in. I've climbed the corporate ladder, so to speak. And yet I keep asking myself, like, is this all there is? Is there nothing more? So there's a lamenting, there's a grief, a little bit of a grief kind of I think feeling that comes with it. And it means that we have evolved or outgrown our former role or function or idea of who we are as a human being. And so to reignite, to renew, to be able to come to that understanding and then start to, from that understanding, unravel some of the things that we probably got caught up in along the way with regard to a certain role and how that defines me, or the work that I do in the world and how I need to continue to do X, Y, or Z to be successful. The reason I say this is for me, if you are shrinking yourself, if you are exhausted, look, we've co-created a society that rewards exhaustion. If you are, like Lola just shared, being in these long meetings where you just can't wait to escape, frankly, I think it's about that as well. That's how you know it's time to really take a deeper look inward and make some decisions or redecide what you're really here to do, why it's so meaningful and important to you, and then how you're going to renew your current reality and turn it into your desired future.
Okay, I just got like chicken skin. I need a personal session with you, Susan. Well, because a couple things, like and Dr. Lola, if you want to jump in before me, that's fine. I just have to touch on some things that you said. Do you want to say something, or are
No,
you?
go ahead. Yeah, you go
Okay.
ahead. Mhm.
So, so interesting, like the reflection of what other people expect of us or want from us. But I also feel like our environment plays such a really important role. Like not just, and we talk a lot on this podcast about creating a thriving environment where ultimately the purpose is the person in that thriving environment can be themselves, right? They can be most authentically aligned with themselves in this thriving environment. And why I bring this up is because I lived in Hawaii for 7 years and I just recently moved back to, I'm going to make this into this podcast about my situation, but I feel like it could be so relatable for people because when I was living in Hawaii, I just moved back to California a few months ago. And I've been wanting to come back for the last 3 years or so. And it was so interesting to experience like connecting with people that lived in that environment. Yeah, of course, the people that we're around that, signifies a huge amount of our environment, just like in the workplace, the people that we work with and what the connections that we have with those. But also, I felt very I don't want to say lethargic's the word, but like it's kind of like in a trance. A lot of people there are, you have arrived at your destination. Your route guidance is now complete. The end, you know? So that environment, that environment was like death to me. Like, yes, being here is amazing. I love being in California and I miss going on hikes and being more outdoors that I was in Hawaii. And that was just the lifestyle I had. But it was very, very just not conducive to my motivation drive. And the fire slowly burned out, you know? And I mean, it was lovely. And at the same time, like, I'm young. I don't want to be sitting here on a beach every day. you know? So when I came back here, I've been thinking about this actually this last week. So I'm so grateful that we get to have this conversation because I was telling the kids now I have the kids full time. My kids, I had part time when I was in Hawaii. And now I have them full time. So part of me is like maybe the thriving environment that I really was desiring was to be around them all the time, right? And then at the same time, like this is my motivation now. Like I see what is coming from this. I see the team that we're building. I see them watching me work with my teams and how that's growing. And then the energy of the other people, and then the other people with that same motivation. So all of that to lead to you talk about expanding capacity without pushing harder or doing more. But
Mhm.
like when I was in Hawaii, I was like doing significantly less because I had zero motivation fire to do that. So it was a very, very no pressure environment compared to here, which is a very high pressure environment. And also, I see my family a lot more, which I know puts pressure as well on me. But it's like I feel more alive. So, what's your take on that?
So being aligned doesn't mean you're not busy.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I like to talk about the difference is, I think that oftentimes we've associated this word hustle. I do not like this word hustle, but we hear it all the time. And we've
Yeah.
associated hustle with worth.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're busy, if we're hustling in a way that is misaligned, that's what kills the fire.
Mm.
That's what dims the light. If we're doing something where we feel alignment, we feel that passion, we feel that energy, it's very different. So there's busyness and there's inspired action.
Mm-hmm.
For me, there's a difference. The busyness is the hamster wheel, the autopilot, automatic pilot, the hustle equals worth kind of mentality. Whereas inspired action is acting from my heart, acting from my soul, acting from those very things that fuel me as a human being and generate the deeper meaning that has direct, again, alignment, that word, with my purpose.
So this is you're speaking my language because I mean I love emotional language because I've spent the last 6 years, working with my mom on this process, learning from her the process. She's done it all, and I've just followed along to understand what she does. And but this is one thing I tell my kids too, because I also believe in the law of attraction and the importance of like what you think you truly attract to your life. And if you spend the time really feeling in that alignment, then you will have inspired action to get to the goals or get to that vision that you have for your life. Except this was really interesting. I was unable until I learned the EMC process and really was able to dive deep into learning those subconscious patterns that I created or I had formed in my childhood and in conflict with my family members and in situations with my intimate relationships. I was unable to really attract and see my value and worth outside of my own subconscious beliefs. So I couldn't drive through inspired action without truly understanding what are those deep patterns and that created those beliefs to begin with. So, what do you do in your practice and in the way that you coach that gets people out of that? I believe this thing because it's deeply rooted in my subconscious from my trauma and patterns in my childhood into how do I have these new beliefs, through that trauma and feeling that self-worth and being able to do less and make so much more.
Absolutely. So mindsets aren't everything, but they're certainly a really big percentage of what you just shared. And for me, it's about paying attention to my intention. When we pay attention to intention, then I am more consciously aware of where I put my energy. How many times have we said yes when we meant no?
Mm-hmm.
I know I have. And I think we're conditioned, again, through our upbringing, through education, through different environments, right? To be pleasers. Because innately we want to be part of the tribe. And so I think, especially for women, if I may say, how do we do that? We do that through care. We do that through nurturing. We do that through sacrifice at times. We do that through saying yes when all we really want is a break, when all we really want is the breath. So when I am saying yes to something that doesn't align with me, you feel it in your body. So I pay attention to how I feel in my body. The body never lies. It tells us what we need to know before it ever gets up here. And so if I'm saying yes to you, to a project that you've just proposed, and I kind of get that feeling in my solar plex, almost like heaviness, that's an indicator. So if I'm paying attention to that, then it helps me understand my intention. Why am I saying yes to you when I have that heavy feeling in my chest? So inquiry is a great tool and a great practice. I feel the heaviness. I'm saying yes, but that heaviness tells me to pause, to understand from where that yes is coming. And if it's not an absolute aligned yes, you need to think about it before you make the decision and understand why you're saying yes when you want to say no, as one example.
Well, I think that's very valid, and I'm gonna let Dr. Lowe speak, otherwise I'm gonna continue with my exciting questions. I think that's very valid, and at the same time, I used to say before I make a decision, I weigh the two options, and I'm going to make the decision in one option, see how my body feels. Is it like, oh my God, this is amazing. Yes, I can't wait. And then I'm going to try on the other option and see how it feels. Like, do I feel that heaviness, right? But then, I had the opportunity to do this EMC process with my mom. And originally, my response was no, because I was so used to pushing my feelings down. I had so much shame. So I really, truly feel like that pain in the solar plex and the stomach that sometimes comes up, that is one way of protecting ourselves, right? Because it gives us that signal like this is not, this is dangerous. But the other side of it is that there is that kind of shame and that fear of uncovering something that we don't feel good about. And so I ended up saying yes because I wanted to do the things that make me uncomfortable because I knew I could grow from those experiences, right? So, how can we really differentiate that feeling? Because part of us wants to say yes when we say yes. It's the part of us that's like, oh my God, maybe that's going to get me closer to what I want. And then part of us, especially when it comes to work and teams, wants to say no because it could be overwhelming for us. It could be put more pressure, it could burden our ability. So how do we get to the point where we can distinguish what do we do? Where do we get unstuck from that stuck place where we can feel the pain and determine where in what direction we should go? Really, I'm just asking you to tell me what my purpose in life is.
So are you asking me or are
I'm
you
asking Susan.
Susan?
Yeah.
Yeah, Susan, go for it.
So then I want to hear what Lola would say to this. Here's the thing. It's never either or. It's always both and.
Mm,
And just because I say yes today, if we link it to renewal, maybe my yes today is a no tomorrow.
mm-hmm.
But that's why I say paying attention to the intention when I can understand and feel in my body. Because you're right, the nervous system will tell us when there's danger. And that's why we need to listen to it. It might not be something that is healthy. The mindset underpinning the danger might not be something that is healthy. If we're inquiring with ourselves, however, and we give ourselves ease and grace around a both and opportunity, we make the decision in the moment based on what we have available to us.
Mm.
As we start to learn those things that are shaped by child rearing, trauma, experiences, environments, power plays, etc., we become more adept at reading our body. So now for me at my age, much older than you are, I know my hell yes. I feel it. I know what it
Mhm.
feels like. I know where it hits in my body, and that's my indicator. Does
Mm.
it mean that I'll never say no to that very thing that I got so excited about? Absolutely not, because we're renewing. We're constantly evolving. And through that, our meaning is changing. So that's how I would answer it. Shift our mindset from either or, yes or no, good or bad, right or wrong, to both and. Polarities are interdependent. They need each other. And that's the
Mhm.
dance that I think we do, that we call personal development.
Mm. Amazing.
As I'm thinking about and listening to intentions and either or both ends, I can't help myself to think about attachment theory. What
Mhm.
attachment really tells us about that intentions is really longing for connection, because we say yes because we long for that connection with the person that we are trying to be connected to. So in moments we get scared of saying no to them because we don't want to be disconnected from them, and we want that we have that longing that actually moves us into the direction of how do we create that connection. But as Paulina was sharing, that as people start to understand more about their emotions and what really triggers them or causes them to say yes when they want to say no, and understand the body and everything that you talked about, they start to really understand what exactly do they need. Yes, I can say no, but what I want to say, I need to know that if I say no, you still care about me. You will still be there for me. I will still matter to you. You're not going to turn away from me because I said no. I want to be accepted, right, in that moment. So I feel like attachment really gives us an understanding why we get busy when we just task so we can actually feel a little bit worthy of ourselves and valued in that way. But also, what are we doing to protect? Well, we are doing this to protect the feeling of rejection, or we doing to protect the feeling of disconnection. So I think it really, emotions play a big role, I believe, in understanding whether we should do things or what we shouldn't do things. And as Polina, you were saying that as you understand yourself better, it's actually creating more connection, renews you as a person. It unlocks the motivation, it unlocks the energy, it unlocks the fire within you, because now you have clarity. You have clarity to know what you want. You can be actually more independent and authentic when you do have secure connection with each other. So I feel like it's everything is driven by our relationships. Yeah.
I
So if
love
I could
it.
just say one thing, you said a really big word in what you just shared, mattering, mattering. And I think a lot of us believe that mattering is linked to belonging. It is in an indirect way, but what mattering really is about is, to your point, to your very point, how is the person or the group I said no to, how am I going to matter to them if I'm not there? I said no, I'm not there. And so will I be remembered? So there's something much deeper, I think, to this attachment piece around the mattering element that is so, so, so important.
Mhm.
Yeah, I love what you shared.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. So, before we kind of close our conversation, I have a few other questions. If there's a situation in the culture of a company and you see that there is some injuries that took place in some relationship, maybe a culture that's been ruptured, what kind of healing dialogue would you create, or do you have like a specific way of communicating to kind of heal that those issues in conversations? Or maybe there's one specific method that you use, or can you tell us more about that?
Sure. I think the first thing that needs to be established is the level of safety that people feel. I think a lot of employees feel that safety needs to predominantly be managed, if you will, or set by the employer. But no, it's a two-way street. How safe do I feel? How safe do others feel? Assuming people feel somewhat safe, then for me, it's less about um, what's said in the conversation and more about establishing the principles and expectations at the outset,
Mm,
insofar as how you're going to have that conversation,
okay.
because that's the first agreement we can make. And then when things go askew, and they will, if we're not feeling safe, we have that thing to go back to, that
Hmm.
agreement to go back to.
Okay. I was listening to an audiobook, me and my books. The guy says in every relationship, work in he was specifically talking about workplace relationships or business partnerships or employer-employee relationships. He said that we have like what is created as a silent agreement or like a silent contract, you know. You have these underlying ways that we respond, how we communicate at the beginning of the relationship that set the tone of the relationship moving forward. And those experiences with that person create this silent agreement. So when we get a different message, a different tone of voice, a different facial expression, a different response, different words that are said, that silent agreement is broken in some way. And that's where a lot of times people feel like, well, something is wrong, you know, something is different than what it was at the beginning of the relationship or the conversations or the business partnership. And so that kind of ties in what you're saying is that, you know, it's really important to maybe we get to a point where relationships are not safe. I mean, we've had lots of conversations with business owners, CEOs and board directors and employees that they've already had so many injuries and difficulties in their relationship that they no longer feel safe to have a conversation. And this is why we like having a process so much because it creates that neutrality. Like it's like nobody is at fault. You are mutually part of the conflict, and it doesn't make either person bad. But we preface with that to create the safety so that we can really bring them back to that beginning silent agreement they had from the start of their relationship. So.
I love what you say, because what I'm hearing in my own way of thinking about it is it's just so important in relationship to make what is implicit explicit.
Yes, and Dr.
So
Lillet says
many
that a lot.
times, right?
Yeah.
We have expectations of others, but we've never expressed those expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Yet here I am expecting something of you that you have absolutely no knowledge about.
Yes.
So when we can get to the level where I can share that, then at least it's clear. You said clarity uh,
Yeah.
a little while ago. It's clear. And when it's clear, then we get to decide. We get to make an informed choice about whether the relationship is working or not. And either is fine.
Do you think?
Oftentimes, if I may, I think it's hard for us to share the expectations if we don't understand how we, or make implicit explicit, if we don't understand how we impact each other. This is one of the things that I find more and more, that when people don't have these conversations of how we impact each other, you know, if you say no, this is how it impacts me. If you say yes, this is how it impacts me. If I say no and you know, you turn away from me, this is how it impacts me. If I say yes because I'm afraid, this is how it impacts. So I feel like if people don't understand how they impact each other, they will not know, they will never know what is it that we need from each other to feel safe and connected. It's That's a hard conversation for people to get used to, is to share that vulnerability.
Yes.
because they first of all, they don't have a role model on how to have this conversation and how to be vulnerable without coming across as blaming or attacking or judging or criticizing. And plus their emotions inside are so activated in the moment when they want to have a conversation, and it always comes out wrong. It's like, okay, I'm just going to make it slow, I'm going to make it safe, and then it comes out blah, right? Like, why didn't you finish this project? Wait a second, I was going to make it soft and slow, and it came out like that. So it's just very interesting how our emotions play such again, I come back to emotions because I never understood the power of emotions that play in our conversations when it's so difficult for us to have these conversations.
Well, I love that. And we are so grateful that you had the time to talk with us. Do you have anything else that you'd like to add, Susan?
Oh, just gratitude. I've really enjoyed the conversation immensely. So thank you. Thank you both so much.
Well, maybe before we close, Susan, can you tell us a little bit about your book that you wrote, and what is it and how people can connect with you?
Oh, great. Thank you. Yeah, so I did co-author a book. It's called A Call to Wholeness. It really encapsulates a lot of what we've talked here about today. And it's really about understanding ourselves as a whole system. We're made up of a bunch of parts, and linking to a lot of the things that we shared about where our attachments might be, what our mindsets might be, why I'm doing what I'm doing when I don't want to be doing it. All those things are part of who we are. And if we can see ourselves as whole, meaning that at any point in time, one part can be kind of playing the lead, I think it really helps us better understand ourselves with some ease and grace, and not kind of the beating up or I was wrong or I failed, right? It's this is just one part of me, and I'm learning something. Easier said than done, though, right? Easier said than done, for sure. For
Where
sure.
did you where did you learn about all this stuff? Like, how did you come into this?
So I started off actually as a psychotherapist. So I got my certifications in psychotherapist. I studied psychology. I've always been incredibly intrigued about why people do what people do. And um, I started my own business when I was 28 upon the birth of my first daughter, because I was in the corporate arena. And when I was on maternity leave, I just was holding this tiny little thing in my hands, and I'm like, something doesn't feel right at work. I don't feel fulfilled. It doesn't feel meaningful. And I wanted to create a different world for her. So that's really what got me started. And then as I started shifting, I decided at one point I didn't want to work with patients anymore. I wanted to work with students. I wanted to
Mm.
work with people who really were committed to, change, and they were driven by personal development, willing to, challenge the status quo, because a lot of my ideas are a little bit out there for many. And that's when I shifted from the psychotherapy area to actually coaching and facilitation.
Mm. Did you do any leadership trainings or?
Yeah. Oh, I've got all the certs. I've done a lot of leadership training, facilitation training, coaching, all of it,
I
and
did.
30 plus years of experience. So,
That's amazing. I did a leadership training in San Diego called Heartcore Leadership.
oh, wonderful.
Yeah, with Sandra Subner, and she did a lot. They did a lot of it was like a 5 month program. It was amazing. And they did a lot of the both and they talked a lot about that. And
Mm-hmm.
actually, that leadership really helped me push to say yes to doing working with this process with my mom and doing therapy and working our relationship. And I feel it
Mm-hmm.
was really a huge part of why I have the relationship with her that I have now. And of course, the process that she teaches and we talk about here is so integral into the relationship as well. But
That's
I
wonderful.
noticed some of the words you said were very similar to what I learned in the leadership training. So,
Wonderful.
yeah. Well, thank you so much,
Thank
Susan. Mom, do you
you.
want to add anything else?
Well, thank you. I love our conversation. I feel like we can talk for hours, and we share such common beliefs and approaches to creating a thriving environment for people and providing some safety for them to have these connected relationships. I love that.
Well, thank you so much, Susan, for your depth and your honesty, your authenticity, and thank you for joining us for your time and your
How can people
dedication.
find you, Susan?
Oh, thank you. So I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on
Susan
LinkedIn
Taylor. Susan Taylor.
under Susan Taylor, yes. And my email and my website is called Tailored Wisdom, Taylored. It's a little play on my last name. Tailored Wisdom at Gmail, and my website is tailoredwisdom.com.
Wonderful. Well, thank you also to our listeners for joining us, for your continued support, your loyalty, your alignment, and your desire to be the best leader you can possibly be. We'll see you next week. Have a beautiful rest of your week. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.